Welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, we're going to be working on the GX470 again. I'm in the middle of my timing belt and water pump service, but I'd have to change the cam seals on here. So instead of doing it all in that long video, I decided to have a separate video just detailing how to change that out, how to take the cam apart and the VVTI gear apart so you can access that seal and change it out. On the 2008 version of the GX470, but on the 2UZ motor, they added VVTI, so changing that seal is a lot more involved than it was on previous versions or older versions of this V8 engine. On the previous versions, all you had to do was take apart the cam gear and put it on. On this one, you had to take the cam apart and everything. So in today's video, we'll go over all the steps of doing that, so stay tuned. So I'm in the middle of doing my timing belt service, and I wanted to make this separate video on kind of detailing the cam seal and how to do that. This cam seal is a big pain in the ass, and most people don't do that if it's not leaking. And really, yeah, if you're not leaking or showing signs of leak, you shouldn't really do it either. That seal lasts a pretty long time, but if you do need to do it, this is how you're gonna do it. So with the VVTI version of this engine, the 2UR, it's very hard, and you have to actually remove the whole cam out of the way and do it off of here just to get that seal. I think on the earlier versions without the VVTI right here, you could take that off and just change the seal right in the front, but now that they changed it up, you have to remove everything in order to do it. So the first thing you need to do is actually take this whole thing apart. Is on the one without the cam gear, you have to put a service screw in there. So in the factory manual, which I'll link down in the description, you actually have to go into there and set a 10mm screw so you don't mess up the spring loadedness of that second cam. On this one, it's all one piece and you can pull off. Once you do that and put that set screw in at top dead center, you can go ahead and start unbolting all the cam caps. So there's an order to unbolt these cam caps according to the service manual, so I'll post a picture of it right now so you guys can see. Based on the order, you want to just start loosening. So the first thing you want to do is loosen all these little 10mm using like a breaker bar, because they're pretty tight on here. At least mine are gonna be because of all this buildup and this sludge that I have in my engine. But go ahead and slowly kind of unbolt or break all the bolts, and being careful not to strip them. It might be good to have a couple of these spares on hand in case you strip the bolts. You don't want to mess those up and then not be able to take it off later or put it back on. On the driver's side, it's a little bit difficult because you have to actually turn this, because right now everything's in top dead center, but these things need to be turned all the way over. So you want to use that little cutout right here, that hex cutout that's back here, using a 23mm wrench. I think there's another cutout right here too, where you could actually put a wrench in. You want to turn this thing. On this side, they have the 2 single dots, which is not where you need it to put that service screw in. You actually put it on the 2 double dots on the 180 degrees from this double dot. So we got to turn the cam 180 degrees, get the double dots, and then we'll put the service bolt in over here. So that wrench over here to hold the cam is actually a 24mm. So on the passenger side, what they want you to do is turn that thing so it's 10 degrees kind of towards your way right here. So once we do that a little bit, we kind of release the pressure on the cam and it sits freely, right? So you want to keep it about 10 degrees right there. So, and you can kind of feel it release its pressure. So you want to do that, and then now we can start unbolting everything. As you go across and unbolt everything along the way here, you go ahead and just take those things off, kind of clean up all the cam caps. You don't have to worry about the order of them. Once you clean the top of these things off, they are all numbered from 1 through 5. 1 being the front here, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you have the intake and the exhaust side. It'll have an E and an I on the cam cap, so you won't be able to mix those things up. But as you go ahead and unbolt everything, the last thing you do is the front here and the 4 of these bolts that you take out. So these bolts all have like a seal washer on them. Be careful with that seal washer. I messed up 4 of mine by soaking it in super clean. That rubber does not take to super clean very well, so you want to take that thing off. Once you clean it off, you want to clean it with something that won't mess up the seals on these, unless you want to replace them at $5 each. But overall, as we take off the cam cap, you have the VVTI actuator that you need to remove. So before we start anything on the VVTI and taking the cam out, you actually have to take these 4 bolts right here, the Allen keys, not the stars. Do not mess with the stars. Those are not supposed to be unbolted. That's all part of the VVTI gear. You want to take apart the Allen keys all around here. There's 4 of them. Take the actual ring for the timing off right there, because once you unbolt everything, there's actually interference between the cap and this, so you have to remove that. Once you do that, you could take the cap off and you could pull the whole cam out once you unbolt all the caps. And pretty much unbolting it all, it's going to be the same on both sides as far as the left side and the right side of the motor. On here, the left side on the US cars, you have the fuel lines and kind of all this stuff in the way that you have to work around with. On the other side, it's pretty much wide open on the intake side, so it's much easier to do on that side as far as this side goes. And one of the things you want to do, just so you don't accidentally drop a bolt, a screw, a socket, or anything down into the oil pan, there's 3 or 4 drains at the bottom of the head here. You want to stuff those with a rag or something. For the oil passages, the ones on the bottom are pretty much the same on both sides. On the driver's side or the left side of the engine, the big hole is on the back side here, so that's where the big hole is. And I don't think there's a big hole or any hole on the front, where on the other side, the passenger side, is kind of flipped, where the big hole is on the front, but there's no hole on the back side of the head. Since I'm cleaning everything, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the lower little black timing cover here too, along with everything else on this side. As well as the other side, is actually held on by this sensor bracket right here for the cam position sensor. So I'm gonna go ahead and just start unbolting this right here. So what they want us to do now is kind of turn this thing using the little hex spots to find the double dots on the cam. So we got that in there. So we want to go ahead and turn this thing so it's at the 2 dots so we can remove the cams. All right, so we got the service bolt in, we got the cams positioned. So we start unbolting all the cam caps now in the order that is recommended in the service manual. Alright, when you guys saw me taking this apart, we had a little bit of casualty right here when I was trying to take out the VVTI solenoid. This thing is like seized inside of there, probably from all the sludge and grime, and it just broke off. So what it did was it just broke the collar, because this thing, all it is clamped on. This is just an electromagnet on the solenoid side, and it just kind of goes in and out and oscillates. And then this thing also oscillates in and out with that magnet right there. So it's like a pump for the oil. So right now the casting basically broke, so I probably have to replace this with either a used one or an aftermarket one. So I'm not looking forward to spending more money on that crap. Other than that, the rest of the stuff, this time I'm going to go ahead and try to soak this in some diesel, see how much that dissolves this grease, and then we clean it off, and then I can hit it with some super clean after that, and then put it in the ultrasonic cleaner to see how much we can get done and cleaned off of this. Man, I've never seen this oil and an engine so bad as this one. For 120,000 miles, this thing is garbage. This is the VVTI filter right here. If you look down the center, you can't even see through this thing. It's freaking solid. I'm surprised we're not getting VVTI and other different codes off this engine from all this shit that I'm seeing in here. But luckily I ordered new VVTI filters and all this other stuff. So as far as changing this seal, which was our ultimate mission here, initially I wasn't thinking about changing it, but after seeing this engine, this thing, I do not trust this seal. This thing has probably been through a lot with all this dirty oil. The manual tells you to do is just basically clamp at this spot right here on a vise so you can get some leverage and take these bolts off right here. So one of the things I forgot to do was unbolt the actual tube and the bolt down here. Alright, I'm gonna have to tap this thing out. It's seized onto here. Alright, once I cleaned it up and I got this thing knocked out, the sprocket that comes out of there, you could pretty much pull the old seal off right here. So inspecting the seal, it looks like it's still kind of rubbery and it could have gone longer, but just that oil buildup and all that nastiness in this engine, I just didn't trust it, so I might as well change it while I'm out. Go ahead and just clean up the rest of this right here just to make sure I get all this varnish and everything off of here from all that old oil before I put everything back together. Alright, got all the parts soaking in this clear bin right here with the diesel. I'm gonna go ahead and put some of the smaller parts in this bucket with my little lid with a hole in it and the pressure cleaner just to wash it all down inside here to keep all the mess contained inside the bucket. So I busted out my ultrasonic cleaner that I forgot about, and I went ahead and just cleaned all the parts after I already cleaned them with super clean. So I just put it in here with a little bit of super clean and hot water just to run it. I even put that seal in there just to see what it would do, and it looks like we cleaned up a lot of that oil that was on that seal. So I'm gonna go ahead and just take this thing out and polish these things all up. So this big old oily, no oil change sludge mess, I'm gonna go ahead and just vacuum up all the bits on here, spray some super clean on it, just let it kind of dissolve some of this away, and then vacuum it out. A lot of this stuff I'm gonna just have to scrub by hand to try to get this out. I know a lot of people don't recommend that, but I've blocked off all the passages and I'm just trying to clean it up as much as I can. This sludge is really bad. So I'm gonna run a quart of diesel with 3 quarts of oil in here for a little bit right after this when I put it all back together, and then I'll drain all the oil, put in new oil, and do like a 1,000 mile interval change just to see how much we can clean up in this thing. So I was over here cleaning these things and I realized that you could take these valve caps off right here and pretty much clean them up. These things are so full of buildup and sludge that I'm gonna go ahead and take them out. That thing in the center right there is an actual little spacer or washer, and there's so much gunk in there that is just stuck in there. So those things were all coming out. So I'm gonna go ahead and just take all these things out right now, put them in the ultrasonic cleaner, and try to clean them up a little. Got all those caps out right there. See that with all the gunk and everything in them. So we'll go ahead and put them in the ultrasonic cleaner over here and let this thing clean itself up. So after the ultrasonic cleaner, it didn't get all the residue and anything off. So I'm gonna go ahead and soak it in here with some diesel overnight. See how much that diesel cleans this thing up. Alright, so after soaking this in super clean overnight and then putting it back in the ultrasonic cleaner over here, I was able to clean out most of that carbon buildup and all that crap on the inside of here on all these lifters. So you can see it's pretty clean, no more residue. On the outside, it did get a little bit corroded from just sitting in the bath of super clean and water, but that's okay because this is a spot where it's gonna rub against the lobes anyway, so it's gonna just end up polishing itself back to the stainless steel. But overall, we're pretty happy with this. We'll go ahead and put this all back together into the valve train and get this thing all put back together on top. All right, so after we got everything cleaned up, got everything off, and took the old seal off, we're gonna go ahead and put the new seal on. There's the part number right there. What you wanna do is remember the orientation of the seal. So the front of the seal is gonna go towards the outside. You wanna just go ahead and put it in there, but before you do, you wanna grease this up with some just regular general purpose grease. So we'll go ahead and put a little bit of that around the ring so we can have it something to ride on, and just kind of put it on the inside of this, just all the way around. Give it a good seal. And we'll put some around the edges because it's gonna eventually have to sit in the race. So you wanna make sure that thing's got a little bit of grease on it. You wanna put this thing on there, make sure it slides on evenly, nothing wrong with it. So that's pretty much it. And then we want to put the gear back on and torque those things back together. So remember the orientation of your gear. So this thing slides back on there. There's a dowel pin right here that goes into. You want to slide it into there, and then you want to put the bolts down into here. So the bolts are only like 66 inch-pounds, right? So they don't need to go on that tight. So they're basically a 10mm torque. So you want to put in there less than 10 foot-pounds to get those things tight in there. All right, the next thing we need to do is put this thing all back together. We're gonna go ahead and get it onto here. I've got it clamped onto the clamp so we could actually torque it. First thing you wanna do, you wanna clean your shaft just to make sure everything's clean. Put a little coat of oil on here. There are oil passages that pass into the VVTI up here and into the actual bolt down the center. So you wanna just put a little bit of oil all around this just to make sure everything's lubricated once we put it back in there. So you wanna make sure you clean this thing out inside of here. This thing is full of oil and other stuff from me cleaning it. So once the oil flows through, hopefully it cleans everything out. So you want to get it in here. So inside, there's dowel pins that match with that one right there, along with the oil holes. Just make sure you kind of get it close to that edge. And once you get it in there, you want to just turn it, and then you'll hear it. You'll hear it just kind of get in there, and they'll stay. So once you're in there, then we get this bolt. So this bolt is actually 58 foot-pounds. Make sure it's clean. All right, so I already got my torque set to 58. Make sure I want to make sure it gets a good grip on this. So. Perfect. Once you do that, you want to make sure you have the seal washer back on here, and this thing goes on 11 foot-pounds. So basically the foot-pound torque of a 10mm, so it doesn't need to go on that tight. So you want to just put it in there. I'll go ahead and tighten it down, torque that to So one of the things you have to do before we put the cam, at least on the right side over here, back on, you want to make sure your key is set to 90 degrees vertical. Right now I'm at top dead center, which is at the dot timing mark here. They want us to go vertical basically to this center bolt right here with that timing mark or that key right there. So right there, I set it to 90 degrees vertical with that line to make sure that we don't get any interference when we put this cam and everything back together. All right, so once we put this thing back in here, we're also gonna make sure we line up that new seal right to this race right here. I'm gonna go ahead, put a little bit of multi-purpose grease right on that race so that way it slides in better. And you just wanna make sure it's seated perfectly onto this one all the way to the ends so you don't get any leaks out of here. So once we get the cam over here, you wanna look for that one dot right on here. You're on the single dot. Make sure that it's close to the inside because you gotta mate that up later with the other cam. Make sure that's in place, and you want to line up around the edges here. Make sure the seal is all the way, and this thing is sitting inside the oil race right over here. So right there, you want to make sure that seal is all the way in right there, flush with this edge on the inside, and then this thing on this side, and that is sitting inside that race, so that way you could pop that thing down. And then on inside, you want to make sure you line up the dots, because when we put the other cam on the bottom here, we want that dot to line up also. So you want to line up the other cam and try to get that dot around the same spot. So it helped to have some light in here so you can see, but you want to do that. So what I want to do is just go ahead and pop this thing in right here with the way the seal is. Slip it right into that spot. Sure my dots are lined up. If they're not lined up, you have to pull this thing out and just kind of line them up. So if you recall earlier when we took it off, they wanted us to turn those dots. That way it pops right in, and then that way there's the pressure on all the cams at top dead center. That way they're not pushing down on the valve. So you want to get it into that same position as we put this thing back. Then we can start putting the cam caps back on and then bolting it down. So before I go and put the cam caps back on and all the bolts on, I went ahead and put a little bit of grease on all the contact surfaces just to have something to ride on when this thing first starts up and there's no oil in the cams or anything. So you want to put a little bit of coat of multi-purpose grease there and on the thrust gears and everything here to make sure that you have a lubricating surface, because when this thing spins, it really just spins with a coat of oil between the caps and the actual race on the head. So you want to make sure those things are good. Next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go ahead and put all the cam caps on and then put the screws in loosely before I go ahead and torque them all down. One thing you gotta keep in mind is when you put these bolts in, the service manual tells you to put a coat of oil on here. So I've got my little thing of oil, and we'll go ahead and coat those as we put the caps on. And right now, I'm not gonna torque it down tight. I'm just gonna go ahead and put it in there and start hand tightening everything down. And once we have everything on there, including the end cap here with all the form in place gasket stuff, we'll go ahead and start torquing it down in the order that I asked for. You saw me put this back together. Just make sure you put a little bit of multi-purpose grease on the thrust areas right here before we put everything back together, as well as some motor oil just to make sure we lube it up and get some oil into the cams and everything before we tighten everything back up. On the driver's side here, on the left side, you want to make sure the two dots are touching each other and the single dots are on the outside here. We're going to do that, bolt it down, remove this guy right here once you bolt it down and torque everything. And then we want to turn it back to top dead center, which is a single dot touching each other. It's weird on this one, on this side, where you have to turn this thing after the fact to get to the service bolt to put it here, but we want to remove that service bolt in this position and then turn it back to the single dot to match the other side. In addition, once we start putting everything back in, you want to go ahead and take a mallet to tap this down if it doesn't go into place and sit into the race here properly. We want to go ahead and on this end, there's that cap right here that we have to put the form in place gasket to put down. On the cap, on the front end here, there's a little area that you have to put the form in place gasket and let it set. You have 5 minutes to put it on and kind of bolt it down before that stuff starts getting tacky. So you remember that when you use the form in place gasket, but we want to get that down. And then the rest of these bolts, we want to go ahead and put the cam caps right here. You want to set them in order from 2 to 5. So it goes 2, 3, 4, 5 all the way to the back. So you want to make sure the intake's on top, the exhaust is on the bottom, obviously, and then bolt those down to 13 foot-pounds. So every bolt on here is 13 foot-pounds except for the two end bolts here, which are just holding bolts, which are 10 millimeters. Those are going to be like 7 foot-pounds, but everything else is 12 foot-pounds that we got to torque to. Also, when we're putting that cap on, don't forget to put the VVTI filter right here. I have a brand new filter, even though the ones I took out of here were filled sealed up. I was able to clean them out with degreaser and super clean, and they're all clean again. But since I bought brand new ones, I'm gonna go ahead and use the new filters into here. We got everything in here. I ended up threading all the bolts onto here, and then that crossover oil tube right there on this cylinder right here, we want to make sure we get that in place. There is an arrow that says down for exhaust, so make sure you put that in correctly. But overall, what you want to do is go ahead and get this all in place. Right now I hand thread everything in. I'm just gonna go ahead and shoot it in, not tight, but just shoot it down so it's snug before I torque it. And then there's an order to torque all these. We have to start with this cap right here, so I need to go ahead and prepare this cap on both sides at the same time, so that way I can get the form in place gasket down within the 5 minutes of work time. All right, went ahead and put all those caps on, went ahead and tightened it with the impact driver just to screw it in faster. All I did was hand tighten it so we get it down, and then once we put these end caps on, we'll go ahead and start torquing everything down to spec. These things only need 13 foot-pounds, which is not that much, so just don't over tighten it, because remember, these caps, all they're doing is just holding that in and holding the cap in place to ride on that layer of grease and oil with the cam spinning in the race. It does not need to be that tight, so don't break anything by over tightening it. For those end caps, I remember when I was cleaning it, I used too much super clean and I killed those rubber swaps on the washer, so I ended up having to buy 8 more of these right here, special order. These things were $4 each, which is a freaking expensive for what they are. You can see that they're just regular washers with a rubber gasket in the middle that fits on these long bolts on the end cap, so there's 4 of them on each side, so I had to buy 8 new ones for those. This side, to prepare it before we put it on, I want to go ahead and clean this area again with some acetone just to get all the grease and oil off so that form in place gasket can seal better. So you want to make sure you do that before you start. Same with the actual cap. You want to go over there and clean that off and clean this off, and then go ahead and put the filter into here so you don't forget about it. These new filters come with this protective cone cap right here. Just go ahead and pull that off and just slip it right into the hole. So you want to go ahead and put it in this way and just put it that way, sticking up. Same on both sides. Into there, just leave it sitting there, and then once we put the cap on, we'll go ahead and bolt that down. So next thing we got to do is we got to put the form in place gasket. So on the end piece right here, you see that groove right around the circle part. You just need to get a layer or a bead into that groove right there and just slide this thing in. On the actual cam cap itself, they're basically mirror images of each other on both sides. What you want to do is you want to go ahead and get it around this edge right here, right around there. You don't want to get it here because that's an oil passage right there, as well as these right here. These are all oil passages, so you want to leave those alone. Over here, this groove that's not as deep, this is for the form in place gasket, so you go all the way around this edge right here. Don't go into here because that's where this piece ends up sitting when it's in there, so you don't have to worry about this piece. Right to here, and then right there you have that regular cam seal right here, so you don't need any more after that. And then you continue again back this way, down that way. You don't need it out here because this is not anywhere that's sealing oil. So, and then, but yeah, on the inside, do not get any of these grooves right here, or right here. Put it on here. I went ahead and just tightened these two down tight just to hold it in and kind of get a squeeze on the form in place gasket out. So we're good here. I'm gonna go ahead and do the other side before I finish up with the rest of these on here. Even though I hand tightened everything down, there was still a couple more turns with the torque, so we were able to torque everything down to 13 foot-pounds. So just go ahead and just follow that order. I'll post that order up on the screen so you guys can see it, and just go ahead and just follow that order so that way you get all torqued down. So next thing we got to do is remove the service bolt. So remember, on this side, the driver's side, we had to put the service bolt right here, but then we also had to turn it to double dots. So we're going to remove this thing and then turn it to the single dot side. This side, everything was pretty much set already as far as the position goes. So what we're gonna do is go ahead and just take the service bolt that's right here off, right there, and just remove that service bolt and then get everything to top dead center by lining up the single dots. Hey guys, thanks for joining me all the way to the end of that video on doing those cam seals. As you can see, it's a freaking tedious job, especially on this vehicle where you have to take out the cam. This is not normal for most Toyota engines, but with that VVTI gear and the way they designed it, you have to take that thing out. And then on top of that, all that sludge and cleanup I had to do on top of the head made the job even worse. It took me a couple weeks to do this, working on it one step at a time, but on this video you can see it can be done in a couple hours if you're patient and you have the time to concentrate and work on it. If you found this video useful, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to your channel, go ahead and subscribe to your channel. Turn on bell notifications to get notified every time I upload a video. For all these different projects, if I can do it, you guys can do it. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time.